Hey, hi there, everyone. It's Laura here, and I am very fortunate today to be talking to an amazing woman who has an amazing business with amazing, I'm saying amazing a lot, amazing experience in an interesting sector. And I know, like me, she's come from corporate, out of corporate, and into the world of entrepreneurship, which I think we are people who do that. Everyone who does entrepreneurship is brave, but especially people who do that, because you have to walk away from all those comfortable things that you have in the corporate world that are comfortable but don't make you happy and fulfilled, I think. And anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So I would like to welcome to the Offer Accelerator Cafe Chat stage, Miss Leah Rose Tangren. Hello, Tangren. I
Hello,
was trying to get
Tangren. Tangren.
Thank
Hello,
you.
Laura. Thank you so much for inviting me on to have a coffee chat with you.
Yeah,
Or
and
I guess it's a cafe chat, not a coffee chat.
yeah, it's a cafe, coffee, whichever works for you. I love coffee, so I try not to talk about it too much because it just makes me want to drink loads of it. And but all good. So tell everyone who's watching this kind of what is it you do? I didn't really explain what you did. I just talked about your transition.
Yeah,
But maybe talk a little bit about, what you're doing now and kind of where that's come from and where you come from, and yeah,
yeah,
go for it.
absolutely. So like you said, my name is Leah, and then Rose Tangren is my last name. Um, for my whole life, everyone thinks that my name is Leah Rose, and then they're
Yeah,
like, "What's your last name?" And
it's
so
yeah.
I like to leave a pause where I say Leah
Yeah,
Rose Tangren.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm a communication and confidence coach. Really, I do more communication coaching, and then confidence arises from that. So I
Mhm.
just lump it in there so that people know that that's going to be a part of the deal also.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I work with the gals, gays, and theys,
Mhm.
especially people in business who want to be able to articulate their messaging and reach their ideal clients, or communicating with their employees
Mm.
or partners or anything. Communication is sorely lacking in the
Yeah,
world in terms of skills of how to effectively, actively listen and just connect with people on that level. I also
mm,
work with English as a second language
okay.
folks, whether they're in business or not, helping them with the nuances of the ridiculous English language and
Yeah, yeah,
helping them through letters and syllables that aren't in their
yeah,
native tongue. So taking for granted that accents exist because there's no such thing as as words. We've agreed that these
yeah,
sounds mean something, and in other cultures they've agreed that those sounds mean something too.
yeah.
So
It's amazing.
I have a very fun perspective of language. I'm like, it's not
No,
real, none
also
of it.
I'm chuckling
Like,
because I've lived and learned Portuguese as my second language and realized how complicated English is because I've learned Portuguese, and yeah. So I'm chuckling at like,
yeah,
yeah. I loved Portuguese because it had lots of rules and every word followed it, right? So that was so much easier. But
yeah.
anyway, you talked, so it's about confidence, it's about communication in the corporate world, or for any sort of sector.
For anyone, I I do like corporate workshops where I can meet with teams of people to help them facilitate their intercommunication with their teams. Um, I think that self-awareness is the first piece of being able to be a good communicator and a good partner,
Mm,
coworker, friend, boss, leader. You have to have that self-awareness of knowing how you come across, what your strengths are, what areas you need to work on, or are your blind spots. And so my structure focuses around personality assessments and understanding where you are versus other people on your team or in your
mm,
surrounding life. Um, and I I come from a Fortune 500 tech company where I was a sales coach for a little over 2.5 years. And before that, I was in the same department. It was like the federal department. So we only
Yeah.
sold to the government. And I was very comfortable with that, those type of nuances and the weirdness of selling only to the government. And what I loved most about the coaching aspect was the people connection and the helping them be more
Mm,
self-aware
mm.
and grow personally. Yeah, I trained them and taught them processes, but that was boring to me. I just wanted to help them be better and be more successful for
I
their
think
next role.
it's such
And
and having sort of been in the corporate world and actually sort of trained in communication and presentation and all of that's confidence and all that stuff as well, actually, in a past life. And it's amazing how many people in that environment don't have that toolkit or don't really, they have little bits. The corporate world teaches you little bits of it, doesn't it? Like a layer of it, but it doesn't actually take you any further. And kind of what you're describing is sort of personal tools that are going to help you and you develop, that then you get the ability to be able to communicate better in the environment that you're working in. And I'm always like gobsmacked at like how and I say this with respect, but only because I've noticed it in like meetings I used to go into, where people just aren't paying attention, right? They're just not paying attention to anyone else and not sort of processing things. And, I guess I kind of got to the point where it's kind of performing in different situations. But it's definitely a tool that every single person needs, right?
so if we I want to example
Mm,
what I kind of do. So, Laura, what I hear you saying is that when you were in the corporate world, you experienced these kind of soft skills that were expected of you, but they weren't necessarily taught to you. You just had to kind of figure it out as you went along. And then you found that people don't even listen
mm.
when you're speaking. And is that
That's
kind of what you're
almost,
saying?
that's nearly what I'm saying. Apart from people listen, they kind of listen, but they're not really listening, right? And
They're
hearing
hearing
you, but
you,
they're not
but they're not
listening. That's a
listening.
really good way of putting it. They're hearing you, but they're not listening. But yeah, exactly that. And that those tools are, I always, and I've worked in lots of different sort of environments in the corporate world, and those tools that seem to be like the most important, obvious tools anyone would want, just are not trained at any kind of practical, useful. I mean, they are useful. I've been trained to present, and I've been trained to, I don't know, interact with my team and and all of that stuff, but not kind of what you're talking about. It feels like there's so much more as you sort of peel back the layers in what you do.
Yeah. And so what I have found is that the majority of people listen to respond.
Okay.
And, and if you pay close attention, you find that you
Mm.
might do that sometimes too, in terms
Yeah, I
of,
mean,
and I don't mean you as in
one.
Laura, I mean
Yeah.
you. I mean the
Yeah.
general you that I'm speaking of.
Yeah.
Uh, but you listen to respond. So as you're talking, I'm not really able to listen to you because I'm hearing what you're saying so that I can formulate my own response back to you, as opposed to let me
Yeah.
understand you. Let me, my goal is to walk away from this
Mm,
understanding you. And your goal walking away from this should be
mm,
understanding me, right? Like all we need to do is understand each other. We don't have to agree. And I've done workshops and talks at work about uh, validation and how validation is so important when dealing with any
mm,
relationship in your life, whether it's a work relationship, a personal relationship, a
yeah.
friendship, anything, because most people just want
Yeah.
to be heard.
I know. I, I,
That's it. You don't have to
they just,
agree with them. They just want to be
and
heard.
actually, and it's funny how I'm fascinated by your sort of journey in this, because, starting from a sales perspective, and, you know, again, having done sort of some of this trainings as well, is I always think, if you're selling, and in the corporate, in any world, you're always selling yourself, or what I mean, your idea, or whatever it is. And if you listen really and watch very closely, people will tell you everything you need to know, right? To sell in a selling environment. They'll tell you everything. And actually, you're right, you just need to pay more attention, and they'll tell you everything, right? And there are sort of like, I think if you did that, that's like 95% of the way there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
same with getting rapport with people and connecting with people. It's kind of
Yeah.
almost that simple.
And yeah, no, you're right. If you give people the space to show up, they will usually show up as as who
Mm,
they are. And
mm,
especially in the corporate world, people, and I'm going to generalize and say women, um,
mm,
have been, you know, pushed into this box of, I
mm,
mean, look at the majority of companies. Women do not dominate leadership. And
mm.
that's just
Yeah.
the reality. And it's
Look at
not
the.
because we aren't capable. It's not because we aren't incredible leaders, incredible connectors. I mean, many things could be said about the current climate of life, right?
Mm,
The United States, for instance, would
mm,
do anything to have anyone but a woman lead.
mm,
And
mm, mm.
and just I guess it's just that way right now. And
Well, I actually, in the and in the corporate world, and I actually have looked. I've worked in a role where I've sort of looked and tracked and analysed this data of like women on boards, right? Women on
Mhm.
boards. So yes, governments around the world, all of that stuff. But actually, sort of on sort of where most of us are spending our time, at work or in work or with clients or whatever, the board level, if you looked at the board level statistics, the female representation is like 10-20% at the most, right? And there are some exceptions for sure, but not many. And and it's not a, I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but it's not as simple. It's not just a women men thing. It's how people get to that place, what behaviors they need, what opportunities they have, and kind of like you were sort of pointing out, the kind of cultural expectations of, it's very, I would agree, and we're generalizing, that it's a lot harder for women to take those leadership roles in corporations and then behave in a way that's effective when they're in them, right? Because and again, I'm sure, you also sort of come from big tech. There are women in certain roles, and they are not behaving in a way that is sort of conducive to bringing more. They're not being who they are. They're sort of molding into a different shape. I guess
yes,
what I'm saying. I'm trying to be really politically correct here, which is unusual for me, but I feel like I'm behaving today. So when it comes to communication skills and confidence, that really is, so required in any sector, but talking about the corporate world, to enable you to get to those positions of leadership, of promotion, of board level, of seniority. These are the skills that really make a difference, right?
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And a piece of how I've kind of gone down this journey of specifically communication, uh, I have been an improv performer and teacher for 10
Mm,
years,
mm,
and I interview so well. this point in
mm,
my life because
mm,
of my improv skills.
mm.
And I speak publicly very well because of my improv skills. My presentational skills are pretty good also because of my improv skills.
Yeah.
And people probably think of improv as being like, this hokey blah blah blah, and people tell me all the time like, "Oh, I could never do that what you do." And
Mm.
I frequently remind them, "Oh, you already improvise every day."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
they're like, "No,
Yeah,
I don't." I'm like,
yeah,
"Was this conversation scripted?"
yeah.
And
No.
they're like, "Well, no, I mean, I couldn't get on stage and do it." And it's like, "You
Mm,
could. You just
mm,
have to practice. It's just like a muscle. Like I can't bench press 100 pounds right now. Uh,
mm.
but if I practiced, I could."
You did, yeah. And actually, that skill with improv, I've learned that in a different context to the context you've learned it, and I agree. So just tell us a little bit about why is that so effective, having a skill like that in a working corporate in any business environment. Just give us some more detail. I've got some thoughts, but I want to hear why does being able to improvise in conversations as a skill, as opposed to just naturally doing it, why is that so useful?
Yes, it is useful. And let me tell you why. So, what I just did was the key premise of improv. Yes, and.
Yeah,
Yes, and.
yeah.
So, if you're a coworker, a leader, whatever our relationship or dynamic is in a
Mm-hmm.
corporate or work setting, and
Mm.
you come to me and you say, Leah, I've noticed that you've been submitting these forms late. I don't know. I'm just going with like corporate jargon of your stuff
Yeah.
is late. I don't know. If I said, no, 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 I haven't, you haven't, right? And now instantly I've
Mm,
said no. So now you're like, oh, hold
mm,
on, hold on, hold on. Like this wasn't a debate. I'm
mm.
coming to you with this information
Yeah.
and this perception I have. Let's, move forward. But if I had said, yes, Laura, I have been submitting them on the later side.
Mm,
And I'd really like to explain to you kind of what's going on so you can understand what's happening with me.
mm.
And now I've set the stage for, yes, I'm acknowledging what you're saying. I'm
Yeah.
repeating it, establishing it as
Mm,
that is the reality of which we live. Even if it's a reality that I don't 100% agree with, I can
mm,
say this is the reality in which we are in.
mm,
And let me help you understand what's going on with me on my side, my team, etc.
mm.
That then you could understand to be like, okay,
Yeah.
this makes sense now why your reports are late.
Mm,
Uh, what barriers can I remove as your leader, coworker, whatever? What barriers can I remove to help this move along faster? Right?
mm.
Like that's the whole idea of having a leader in a job.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
leaders should be removing barriers.
Mm,
That's it.
mm, mm,
They should be removing barriers and amplifying their employees. And if
mm.
they're not doing those things, that's why people are leaving jobs.
Well,
So
I would love to know the stat of how, and this is maybe in cynical, but I'd love to know the stat of how many leaders do that, which I should think isn't that as high as we would like it to. But
no,
leaving
no.
that aside, I actually also I think, and my context to this is I've been in Toastmasters for like 20,000 years, and part of that process is they call it table topics, which means that you stand up, someone asks you a question, you've got to put together, like what you're talking about, put together an answer. And the questions you get asked in that context, it could be about anything crazy, anything, right? But actually, what the skill, and it's the same skill you're talking about, gives you is, and if I put myself in the corporate world, that skill gave me, that communication skill gave me the ability to sit in any meeting, in any room, at any level, with any pressure, so board level, knowing, I used to think this all the time, knowing I'll come up with an answer,
Mhm.
which is structured okay and it isn't a load of gobbledygook, no matter what the pressure that I'm under. So it means that, and a positive way, you know, by you helping people communicate better, and this is just one example, means that A, you're always going to have an answer, but B, you can take those opportunities, right? You've got opportunities when you're in these situations. And if you're panicking about, oh, I don't know, you know, you've lost it, right? But when you have like the tools that you're talking about, you can really take advantage of those situations too. And, you know, along with being a better leader and along with all of that stuff. And it's kind of these nuances in what you train people to do, which I think is the real value, isn't it? It's being able to not just go into work and say, hey, I'm a good communicator, you know, woohoo, I've done Leah's training, I'm really good, I can do some improv, you know, but it's so practical. And, you know, I'd love to hear sort of other ways. And just for anyone watching, we didn't plan any of this, did we? We're both.
No, I got no list of the questions you were going to ask.
Yeah.
I imagine you don't even have a list because we're just winging it. And
We
yeah,
are using the skills that you train with to demonstrate that it's Friday afternoon for me and I didn't get the questions over in time. And so, yeah, and that's just busy. But actually, again, it's demonstrating how valuable the skills are that you're training with, right? And I think, you know, I'd love to hear more about sort of examples of like people that you've trained and sort of what are the differences that you see between people when they first come to you and then people when they've sort of, I guess the first question is kind of what are people coming with? What are their biggest challenges that they're like, Leah, help me? Or do they just come and say, I need to communicate? Or do they come with other stuff? And then how do you see that kind of transformation?
yes. Thank you for that question. So I have some clients come to me who aren't native English speakers,
Mm,
and they will hear about what I do in a networking event or through friends or through someone who I've already worked with.
mm,
And they will come to me saying, can you help me be a better speaker around people? And
mm,
so I say, sure.
yeah.
So the first things that we do for one of my clients, for instance, she sent me some videos that she
Mm,
recorded of herself presenting.
mm,
One was a Zoom presentation, one was an in-person presentation.
mm,
So what I worked with her on is like her speed in which she speaks because she is fluent in English. That's not an
mm,
issue.
mm,
She's fluent in English. She has some trouble spots,
mm,
and those are sometimes grammatical things and
yeah,
plurality. Like
yeah,
plurality is a strange thing in
yeah.
English
English, yeah,
versus other languages. So
yeah,
saying something like you does this instead of you do this, but then saying Leah do this
mm,
instead of Leah does this, right?
yeah,
It's the weird nuances of our language. So uh I'll do like in the moment corrections in those situations,
mm,
and then just more articulation and practicing of the syllables and the letter combinations that aren't in their native language.
mm,
So I have found that certain like W's and R's are different for certain language
mm,
nations. And then STS is something that's difficult for other languages. So like if you were to say, uh, he resists his fists,
mm.
right?
Yeah,
The articulation of all of those syllables
yeah,
is difficult for I imagine that speaking a language like German or Russian would be difficult for me because I'm not used to having my mouth make those sounds.
mm,
So
mm,
it's just a matter of exposure to the different sounds that your mouth makes and understanding how
yeah,
to make those sounds happen. And since we're still working together and we've had, I guess, 2 months of work together, it is a world of difference. She
Mm,
speaks so much slower and more articulate
mm,
and with intention. And that's such a huge piece of communication
yeah.
is the intention. So I could have said what I just said with intention, and that's such a huge important piece of speaking is intention. That
Mm,
doesn't hit as much as
mm,
intention.
mm,
And people don't, you know this from Toastmasters and
mm,
speaking publicly,
mm,
but if you've never had that experience,
mm,
you can't really articulate why this person you just heard speak for 45 minutes was
mm,
so impactful.
mm.
And the reason is cadence,
Yeah.
pauses,
Yeah.
emphasis, and and
Mm,
and not speaking monotonously. We've all had people who we've worked with in our life who just literally stay on the same tone the entire time, and our brains are really good at tuning things out if they really don't want to listen to it because it's boring, and so our brains just like, "Oh my God, what are they even saying? I don't even know what's
yeah.
happening." But if I were saying something and I kept people on their toes by changing my expression or my hand gestures or the tone of my voice. If I say something quietly, you lean in because it's important.
Yeah.
And just these little things that you learn.
Mm,
Truly, I don't even know if I have ever been taught those things
mm,
in a formal way of this is, it's just, I've learned by being on stage
mm,
and being and needing to present my made up situation to 50 people in a room
mm.
because improv is just playing make believe as an adult.
Yeah.
And so when people are like, "Oh, it's so cool what you do," I'm like, "No, we're nerds.
Mm.
We're playing make believe. We're grown ass people playing make believe."
Having fun.
Yeah, we're just having fun. And
But
that's the most important thing. Like
yeah.
we can't take everything too serious. Yes, if you have a really important message to deliver to people, absolutely do it with passion.
Mm,
And so I've noticed so much with her that her whole style has changed.
mm,
She the way that she articulates her messaging is more intentional. And we're doing practice runs now where we're pretending to be on like a webinar like this.
mm.
And
Okay.
and I'll like introduce her and she just picks a topic and just goes off the top of
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And then we talk about it after of, okay, great topic. You have to think of what people will remember. So it's totally fine to go off the top of your head and give a topic, but if you're going to give 5 things about something, have it be something that can be an acronym or something memorable that people can associate things to.
Mm,
And one of my other favorite things to do, especially with people who have any name besides a typical English American name,
yeah.
right?
Like
Uh,
Laura Chattington. Yeah.
like Laura Chan,
Yes.
um, or Steve or Bob or Tom, but even if you have a very
Yeah.
memorable name like that,
Yeah.
especially Americans, and I'm gonna totally put like
Mm.
North American, US
And the
people.
English. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm putting
We're
I'm
with you.
putting
Yeah.
I'm putting US English people in this category right now.
Yeah.
In general, compared to the rest of the world, we are not as traveled, learned, experienced
Mm.
as everywhere else. For instance, you
Yeah.
live in a native English speaking country. However, you are bilingual. The
Yes.
majority of people I don't know the statistics, but the majority of people who are native, no, whose family emigrated here and who live here presently through several generations
Mm.
that have all spoken English,
Mm.
we generally don't know more than our language. We
Yeah.
generally, which is why you see these other people from different countries come to the United States
Mm.
and changing their names so
Mm.
that American people
Can
can
understand
can
yeah.
accommodate and say their
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
I am firmly against that.
Yeah.
Tell me your name
Yeah.
and correct me when I'm wrong
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this is your name.
Yeah.
You deserve to have it
Yeah.
your name. So what
Yeah.
I'll do is like even for my name, people say Leah or Leah, and I say, "You can only call me Leah if you call me Princess Leia." Now, what have I just done there? I've
Yeah.
attached myself in their brain to knowledge that already is probably there. Star
Yeah.
Wars,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they might not remember that my name is pronounced Leah, but when they see me again, they're going to be like, ah, Star Wars, Leia, and then
Yeah.
Leah, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you want to make yourself memorable in the groups that you're in and the people that you meet. And the best way to do that is to latch on to a word, a phrase, a pop culture reference that already exists in majority of people's heads. So
Mm,
my friend's name sounds like a month, but
mm,
it's pronounced without that first letter. So I have her introduce
mm,
herself as,
mm,
this is my name. Think
mm,
of it like this month with a different letter. And then it's like, oh, okay. Now
oh,
I
yeah.
know how to say
Yeah,
it. Now I
yeah,
know how to say your name.
yeah, yeah.
So it's also about those little nuances and
Mm,
connecting the lay American brain to
mm,
something that they can remember and hold on to.
mm. And actually, the difference I think between English and Americans is that in an hour's flight, we go into a whole different cultural foreign language, different, you know, that, so we are, even if we're not bilingual, we will have traveled into lots of different countries just because our country isn't as big as yours, right?
Yes.
Um, but I think that the nuances in it, and I'm just going to sort of go back to where you were talking about before, where sort of these nuances, and obviously for someone who's speaking for a second language, that's I mean, I've been there, and it, you know, hats off to anybody
Hmm.
who can communicate in a second language, let alone do it in an effective way. But and you were talking about sort of the tone and the delivery and the speed, and it reminded me of just someone I've been working with who, when you want to have impact at the beginning, or you're opening a training session or a webinar or whatever it is, whatever it is you're doing, just things like simple things. And what I love about what you're saying is it's all really simple stuff. You just need to connect all the dots up, right? And it's things like being able to tone down and pause so that what you say has more impact. And if you say it and you raise, you know, as you were saying, you know, you do it fast and you go up at the end of the turn, and it kind of like, I've just shot someone dead and da 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 da. It's like, okay. But if I'm like, I've just shot someone dead, you know, just not that I have shot anyone dead, by the way,
No,
but
no,
that was a
to
really
be
bad
clear, you in
example.
fact not shot anyone
No,
or make them dead. No.
but you know, the difference in tone and pause has a massive impact difference. Now, we're talking about presenting on stage, but actually in the workplace, it really makes a difference in how people hear you when you want to have
Mhm.
more impact too, right? And I
Yeah.
think again, and you might have found this as well, I've trained women to slow down and tone down, because again, to have that posture that they need, not all the time, but in certain situations, that is a good tool to use in certain working environments, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think I love I so I'd how do we find out more? Where do we find you? How do we find out more about what you do? There's so many. I mean, we could talk for hours about all these things, but I think sort of my biggest takeaway, and I'm sure people watching also, is that there are tools that you can use to communicate in your, whether you're in the corporate world, whether you're in business, that is transformational in how you communicate with and influence people positively,
Mhm.
obviously. So how do we find you, and how do you sort of go about working with people?
Absolutely. I have my website is LRT Coaching, which is just my initials,
Hmm.
super easy.
Hmm.
LRTcoaching.com. I also have Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram of LRT Coaching, and I have public profiles everywhere too, so you can
We'll
find.
actually put all the links underneath this video. So for people who don't remember it, we'll put all your links. So the best way is just to connect
Mhm.
via your website or via your social
Yeah.
platforms,
Either
or
way, reach out on socials or that, or email. My email is lrtcoachingok@gmail.com because I'm in Oklahoma. That's it. But
Okay.
even though I'm located in Oklahoma, I do all my sessions virtually. So
Mm,
you do not have to be local to the United States
mm,
or to Oklahoma or anywhere. If you have a computer and if you have an internet connection and a device that you can be on video with, we
mm.
can connect.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
also want to mention I have a group coaching series starting this Sunday,
Mm,
and it is beating the winter blues because I know that here the holiday season is hard for a lot of people,
mm,
and the the shorter days are hard, the shorter, periods of light. Um, and the sads are real.
mm,
And really my inspiration was I hate this time of year and it's a big struggle for me.
mm.
And if I struggle with this, surely other people do
Other
too.
people do
So,
too. Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
I just wanted to create a space. It's different than my communication style, right? But
Sure.
it kind of is still communication because we're learning how to listen to ourselves,
Mm,
and what we say to ourselves is so important, and it will affect every aspect of our day and life. So if I'm going around every day being like, God, I'm such an idiot. What an idiot. What a
mm,
dummy. Like, then I'm going to feel like a dumb person.
mm, mm.
And and the reality is I'm not, but I'm telling myself I am. So my brain's like, well, I guess we are, if that's what you're saying. So
Yeah.
it's so important how you communicate to yourself and
Mm,
the things that you say and how you say them to yourself. And, oh, I'm so lazy. No, no, no. You're just not making it a priority right now.
mm,
And that's okay
mm.
because that little switch is so impactful. You
Yeah.
know, I challenge anyone watching this or you or even myself, the next time you find yourself saying something negative about yourself or, oh, I ate too much. I didn't work out. Anything that you're shaming yourself for at any level, take a step and say, I'm just choosing not to prioritize that right now.
Mm. It's a good reframe.
Because then it's a choice and it's not
Yeah.
taking over your life.
Mm,
You have control. We I don't know if everyone knows this, but you each have control over everything in your life. Life isn't happening to you. You are choosing every step you take.
mm.
If the choice is to lay in bed, that's the choice you made.
Yeah.
Not, I can't get out of bed.
Mm,
No, you're choosing not to. And
mm.
that's okay. You can choose not to make getting out of bed a priority right now. And and oh, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do with my career. No, no, you're just choosing not to prioritize that. And then once you realize that everything is a choice, you can prioritize your choices differently. And that one little nuance right there will change your life.
Yeah.
Just that. Just that.
I actually think that, and it's something that I have been working on for about 20 years now, the internal dialogue, right? And
Yeah.
how not only to shift it from, we are our biggest critics, I think, especially women, especially
Mhm.
women. Um, and I kind of got to the point where I'm just like, get all the negative out. I don't even want to consciously acknowledge it, right?
Mhm.
But there's also, it's also very powerful in how you can use it in a positive way, in a constructive way. But as you say, in your group at the moment, which is a kind of, it's a support environment, right?
Yeah, it's
You're kind of
a
come and
supportive
hang
community
out.
environment.
Yeah.
We'll be working on gratitude, finding joy, and because I don't know if you know this, but here in America, we've played this game for years. I don't know if y'all do it there. I don't even know. I don't know. But it's the Volkswagen game when you're driving around and you say punch buggy, whatever color car it is.
Okay.
And we don't do it as much these days because there's not very many Volkswagen Beetles around these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
However, growing up, there were. And so on road trips, you'd play punch buggy this car, right?
Yeah.
And when you're looking for things, you find them.
Mm.
So
Yes.
when you have your filter set to find Volkswagen Beetles, you will find them.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking for negative things that validate I'm terrible, you will find them. And it doesn't make it any more true. It's just that's what you have your lens set to
Conscious.
find.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you just even turn your gratitude lens up at all,
Mm,
and you go outside and you see the wonder of the world around you,
mm.
I find so much joy in finding a random little bird, and I'm like, "Oh, look at you, friend," and I genuinely feel so happy
Yeah.
just seeing a bird.
Yeah.
And driving home last night, I saw a shooting star, and I was just like, talking to myself as I do, and I was like, "Oh, a shooting star!" And I was
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it's when you are looking for the little joys, you will find them.
Mm.
So it's just a community, and it's a small group. Each session only has 15 people in it. I have some open that are more friendly to the European time zone.
Okay.
Um,
That's what you're going to say.
I
More friendly to the Europeans, but
no,
not all of them. Yeah.
just
The
the
time
time
zone.
zones, just the time zones. Um,
Yeah.
I had one open for Sundays at 8 in the morning Central Time. So
Mm.
I
That's
think that's
2 o'clock our time, 2
it's 2
p.m.
o'clock your
Yeah.
time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
And
yep.
then I had one for Mondays at 11 a.m. Central. So it could be like lunch people for the US
Yeah.
folks
And then
or
dinner for us.
after work
Yeah.
for
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the Europe folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have those open right this moment, but if
Mm.
people are going to, because I didn't want like to have one person join and then be like, oh no, like there's
Mm.
no one else. This isn't a community. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
still, then it'll still be fine.
Yeah.
So I can open those back up if there is interest in them.
Mm.
I will, just since we had this call today,
Mm.
and hoping that some people will come and join. It's
Mm.
a I think it's a very affordable rate. It's $20 per session, and it's an hour a week. And we just come together. We'll do mindfulness, journaling, and gratitude, really. And
Mm.
yeah,
Feel better, feel good,
yeah.
better,
And
feel
the
grateful,
expectation is
and
you won't be so blue anymore
yeah.
after the winter blues session.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think it sounds like an amazing thing to do, and I think it's for even people who are feeling okay, I still think that practice is super
Mhm.
healthy for anybody. So we
Yeah.
will include all the links and all that stuff below this video. Thank you so much,
Thank
Princess
you so
Leah.
much. Thank
Rose.
you, Laura. I appreciate this time so very much.
Thank you so much. I look forward to finding out more about what you do, and yeah, click on all the links, find Leah where she is, and yeah, join that session, because it sounds like a good kind of rhythm to have in your life.